Okay, I'm going to show you how to graph equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity, etc. All right, so your graph will look a little bit like this, only a little smaller, and you have a different title. This one we're going to talk about tomatoes. It's a good idea to have your cheat sheet standing by to help you out with this. And so first thing, you need to figure out the equilibrium price. So what is the equilibrium price according to this graph? Okay, we can see the equilibrium price is where the demand curve and the supply curve intersect. So this is the equilibrium price. So equilibrium price, therefore, is $5. So I'm going to put that in my answer. Okay, then what is the equilibrium quantity? Again, we take a look at where the demand curve and the supply curve intersect and take it down to the quantity line. And we see, now it says 5, but don't put that as your answer. You always want to check. This says in thousands. So in fact, the equilibrium quantity is not 5, but it is 5,000, and it's not just 5,000, it's 5,000 tomatoes. Okay? Now, now we need to actually plot this out. I suggest you have a different color for each step along the way. So I'm going to use green for the first plotting points. It says here, plot the equilibrium price and label it EP1, and plot the equilibrium quantity. Sorry, I fixed this, but I forgot to print it out properly. Equilibrium quantity, and label that equilibrium quantity EQ1. So that's what I'm going to do. You don't have to have a ruler, but some sort of straight edge definitely makes it easier. And so here we go. Remember, dotted lines for prices and quantities. Dotted line, equilibrium price 1, and then I'm going to put a check mark, boom, done. Then equilibrium dotted line, quantity 1. Now, next step, it says plot $2 on the graph. So this is a new stage. Plot $2 on the graph and label that price P2. So I need to find $2. Okay, here's $2 here. Now, when you do this, you need to take, when it's not equilibrium and they just say, hey, plot a price, you need to take that dotted line and take it all the way across your graph. I know some of you don't particularly enjoy authority, you don't like to follow directions, and so you can choose to do whatever you like, but I can assure you your results will be much better in terms of your grade if you follow directions, and you'll understand it better as we go through. If you want to take that line and take it all the way across your graph, label it. Since we've already done a 1 here, we should be labeling this price P2, but it's not EP2 because, look, this is not equilibrium. This is equilibrium. This is just some random price. Now, the next step is more difficult. We need to plot quantity supplied. So, in order to do that, we have to look and find where quantity supplied is. Now, at this price, with this line, it intersects these two curves, one here and one here. Now, which is this? Is this quantity supplied or quantity demanded? Before you answer, check and see which curve this point belongs to. Is this quantity supplied or quantity demanded? This one, is this quantity supplied or quantity demanded? This intersects demand curve here, so that's quantity demanded. Bring this down, call this QD, make it match this. So what number should this be? Again, this is on the supply curve. We bring this down, and we call this quantity supplied, quantities QS, quantity supplied, and what number do we make it? We make it 2 to match your price, okay? Now, we've done this, we've put our price, we've put our quantity supplied, we've put our quantity demanded. Okay, now, at $2, what has been created? Has a shortage been created or a surplus created? Now, one way you can do that is just look. Is quantity supplied greater or less than quantity demanded? Take a look. If quantity supplied is greater than quantity demanded, you have a surplus. Quantity supplied is less than quantity demanded, you have a shortage. So what do we have here? What is the quantity supplied? It's a 2. What's quantity demanded? It's an 8. So which one is greater? Quantity demand is greater, well then that tells us it's a shortage. So that's what we put here. We put shortage. What's the reason? Why do we say it's a shortage? Then you put in full English, full sentence, quantity supplied is less than quantity demanded. Okay, and then how much of a shortage or surplus was created by setting the price at $2? All you basically do here is once you figure out those numbers, you subtract the smaller number from the bigger number. So what's the difference between 8 and 2? The answer is, or you could look at the fancy thing here for shortage. Bigger number from smaller number from bigger number, you end up with you have a shortage of 6. There's 6 less than there should be, or 6,000. Ooh, I messed up. That's in thousands. So the shortage is actually 6,000 tomatoes. Tomatoes. Okay, I would have lost points there. Okay, next, we're going to take it a little bit more complicated. Okay. So now here is a market for used Toyotas. Okay, so the first thing that we do here is, what is the equilibrium price? What is the equilibrium price? Okay, what's the equilibrium quantity? What number should I put here? Needs to match this. Okay, equilibrium price is, oh, let's take a look here, in thousands. So equilibrium price is and equilibrium quantity is, okay. Now, we've plotted it already, plotted the equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity. Now, plot, let's see here, we're going to do this a little differently. We're going to do $9. We're going to plot $9 on the graph and label it P2. All right, so I'm going to go for a different color. And what should I label this? Is this equilibrium? $9, is it equilibrium? It's not equilibrium, it's just some random price, and so we're not going to put EP, we're just going to put P. And what number? We've already done a 1, so we're moving 2. So we're going to plot $9. Remember, when you're doing one of these arbitrary prices, take it all the way across the graph. Okay, so then what does that give us? What is, pay close attention to the curves, which is intersecting with this price and where. What is the quantity supplied for this price? What is the quantity demanded for this price? Let's see if you got it. Plot this down here. The $9 is intersecting this curve, and this is a D, so that's quantity demanded. What number do I put here? 2. All right, this price intersects this curve here. And what curve is this? This is the S, so we take this down. Quantity S supplied. What number do we use? Okay, so now we know at $9, check, check, check. At $9 is a shortage or a surplus created. So here we have quantity demanded is 1, quantity supplied is 7. Is quantity supplied bigger than quantity demanded, or is quantity demanded bigger than quantity supplied? Quantity supplied is bigger than quantity demanded, which means we have a what? A surplus. Okay, so we have a surplus. And why? Because quantity supplied is greater than quantity demanded. So how much of a shortage? Again, subtract the littler number from the bigger number. So what's the amount of the shortage? Excuse me, surplus. Surplus. What's the amount of the surplus? Amount of the surplus is 6. 7 minus 1 is 6. Now, here's where it gets more complicated. On your older one, the third and fourth page in your packet, it's going to ask more complex questions. Here it's asking, what if the federal government instituted an income tax cut? Okay? The federal government instituted an income tax cut. Is that going to more directly affect demand, meaning consumers, you or me? Or is that going to more directly affect supply, meaning business owners? Income tax, not a corporate tax, an income tax. Is that a demand thing or a supply thing? That's a demand thing. Corporate taxes are the ones that affect business owners directly. So what would happen to demand if all of a sudden we all got an income tax cut? What would happen to demand? It would increase. We have more money to spend. Okay, so now plot this new demand increase on the curve. So am I going to shift this demand curve or the supply curve? I'm going to shift the demand curve. Am I going to shift it to the left or to the right? It's an increase, so I'm going to shift it to the right. So I'm just going to draw my new demand curve right here. Ooh, ugly, but it'll do. And what am I going to label it? All right, now we've got a situation. This is no longer equilibrium. The market has changed. We now have a new equilibrium price. So then after that change, you need to plot we did the demand. Now you need to plot the new equilibrium price and the new equilibrium quantity. So pick another color and show that. Now, this demand curve no longer matters because we have a new demand curve. This one, supply curve, still matters. This demand curve it's like it doesn't even exist anymore because the market has changed. So where does this and this intersect? Right here. Okay. And what am I going to label this here? EQ or QS? And what number? We've done 1, we've done 2, 3. Take this over. Am I going to call this an equilibrium price or just plain price? And what number? Okay, so that's the more complex ones that you'll need to do.